So I made these 5 sites that follow the same concept: Boon, Bane, Bone, Bonk, and Honk. And they're all supposed to do relatively the same thing, but in different ways. So right now on Boon.Land, clicking the Boon button only really changes the image on the button and the background of the site. There's also a summary or details section, I believe. Yeah, there's a details component that asks the question, what is this? And the contents say, this is a design project made by Squashy, but the link on it is currently broken. On Boon.Land, there isn't that button, there isn't that details component. And the Boon button has a different image than the one on Boon.Land. Clicking through them, there's some SVG that loads. It's interesting. Let me see if caches. Disable cache. Alright, but when they load, there's a delay that changes the size of the actual button. I forgot exactly what that's called. Layout shift, I think. On Boon.Land, it's supposed to be in between Boon.Land and Bane.Land. So right now the way that's represented is only with text. Boon.Land is a typo. Did you mean Boon.Land or Bane.Land? I'm not necessarily sure that I like that text, but I do like that there are links. Bonk.Land is the same as Bane.Land exactly, except for I think the manifest.json is different. Honk.Land is similar, but has a different fab icon. So right now I think the main issues are that these SVGs take a long time to load. Once they're loaded, it's not tremendously noticeable. Well, they're cached, so there isn't that layout shift, I should say. Boon.Land, I noticed that this image is 2000 by 2000, but is being served here. Let's see how big that is. About 400 by 400. So I believe resizing that would be a good idea. They're small images because this is WebP format. This is about 80 kilobytes, but that's still bigger than we would hope it would be. So cumulatively, these are 113 kilobytes, and that took 170 and 250 milliseconds to load. So if we were to try to load those separately, if there were more things that were relatively the same size, that would add 300 milliseconds of delay towards the, maybe, it depends on how they're actually loaded. But generally, requests that are executed in parallel load a bit more slowly than one that is reasonably sized. That is not quite the best way to generalize, and I'll go into more detail in another video. But I think the main thing, let's see how big these SVGs are. 1 kilobyte. So that's not so bad. One thing we could do to make this a bit better for usage is inline these SVGs so there aren't that many requests being made, and then probably lazy load the component itself just in case it's too sizable. Also add a skeleton component to make sure that layout shift doesn't happen. also probably get the assets from one more consolidated place, because right now these are all yeah, I don't think that the caching policy on these sites is necessarily the most asset friendly. But with that, there needs to be some sort of plan about the naming scheme of the specific files, the cache busting policy, so on. So that's where we are now. Recently, I came up with a naming convention for my images, and I also resized the web keys for the Boonbutton on Boon.Land. So right now, this is the original 2000 by 2000 pixels. 80 kilobytes, and the resized version is 32. So that's significantly better. And it's still twice the size of the one on the site, but I noticed that it was starting to get a bit fuzzy. I might check the settings and GIMP to see if adding more dots per, is that the right one? Yeah, pixels per inch. I'm not sure if changing that setting would give us better resolution in the ways that we see the button. I'm not sure if that's significant for our purposes. The reason these are in folders like this are because if I didn't have this asset, for example, but all of these were in the same folder, it wouldn't necessarily be obvious to me if there were a whole bunch of these which ones were missing. Because just skimming, I see that 0, 0, and 0, 1. 0, 1 has 2 of them, but if they were both in the same folder, you'd be alternating. And the question that I'm mostly asking is, what is the current state of this file for this reason at this size? So I see 1000, 2000, 1000, 2000. It's a lot of context to keep switching between. So having them in separate folders makes it a little bit easier to manage. So that's where we are right now. I'm gonna go back through this video and come up with some bullet points about what we're looking for.